Hello everyone and welcome to Mad Knitting. I don't know what episode this is, somewhere in the 60s I think, but it is October 9, 2024 and I am coming to you from my home in Madison, Wisconsin. What else do I need to tell you? You can find me online as madtownmama on Ravelry or madtown_mama on Instagram. And here we are. It's a beautiful day in Madison, maybe a little warmer than normal. Considering it's October, we have not turned on the heat once at home, which is unusual. Usually by now we have. As I am talking to you, Hurricane Milton is bearing down on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and it's just terrifying to watch that when just a couple of weeks ago, Hurricane Helene just devastated parts of the Southeast, especially Western North Carolina. So I'm thinking so much about climate change and the impact it's having on all of us. I do have a good friend from college who lives in one of those small towns in North Carolina that was basically wiped off the map. And I didn't want to bother her, but I sent her a text just to see if they were okay. And she said that their house was not flooded, but they were without power and water. And this was a while ago, so I have no idea how they're doing now. It's just terrible. Anyway, and on top of that, the election is less than a month away, and so I'm very anxious about that as well, wondering how that is going to go. However, for today, I am here to talk about knitting. That is the purpose of this channel, in case you didn't figure that out from its title, Mad Knitting. I do also foray into other crafts occasionally. I don't have any to show you for today, but I do sew and quilt here and there. And when I have something to share about those things, then I will. So today, all I have are works in progress. And if we have some time, I will share a little bit about what I'm reading. I have nothing finished to show you because I had another fail, but we'll get to that. Before we get to those things, I'll just share with you what I'm wearing. This is the Porty Cardigan by Gudrun Johnston. I finished it this past spring, just before my family took a big trip to New Zealand, and I wore it there and it was perfect. The yarn I used is Lanas Light from Berroco, and I'll show you a close-up of the yoke because it's so beautiful. This is listed as a sport weight yarn, but I like how it knits up as fingering weight, so that's what I used, and it was perfect for this pattern. This was a steeked design. It was not my first steek, but it was only my second. So I'm building up a little bit of courage each time I do it. Yeah, I absolutely love how this turned out, and I love how it fits, and I'm glad that for now it's cool enough for me to wear this. When I go out later, we have a weekly vegetable drop off, and it's in the neighborhood, so when I walk up to pick that up, I will probably have to take this off because it's like in the low 70s Fahrenheit here, so, and very sunny, so very warm. Okay, so all I have to share today are works in progress, and there are several of them. For me, it's a lot. It's been about a month, maybe not quite a month, since I last did a video. Everything's fine, I just want to say, but I've been busy enough with work travel and just work in general and life. Like I have a stack of music back here that I need to learn for something, another piece back here that I'm working on to play for my daughter. I have music work, travel. I'm still getting used to having only one kid at home, which is kind of an odd adjustment. So it means that I'm like less busy, I guess, but I'm just still kind of adjusting to that. Anyway, I have for work been spending a lot of time planning events, running meetings, attending things where sometimes I'm in charge, sometimes I'm speaking, sometimes not, but I'm spending so much time like in front of people, talking, presenting, that somehow the thought of sitting down to do yet another presentation, if you want to call this that, even though it's very informal, has just not been that appealing. So that's one of the reasons I've been less frequent here. And because I'm so scattered and adjusting to life, you know, this new sort of phase we're in of kids getting older and one of them leaving the house, I've been a little all over the place with my knitting. I have a lot of different things I'm working on, which just, it feels different. So let's talk about it. My two works in progress, my first two are socks. And I think these had started the last episode. So this may be review. Here's a finished sock. So I've started the second, but I'm going to show you this one. I'm showing you the side with the stitch holders because the stitch holders help me mark the number of rounds so that I can make the second one exactly the same size. So this is sort of an improvised pattern using some Tweed sock yarn by Sun Valley Fibers that is left over from a sweater that I made 2 years ago, maybe. I love these colors. I mean, this, I don't know if this is undyed, but it's basically a white, you know, with the tweed flecks. And then this is this beautiful kind of dusty teal. And the sock is pretty basic overall. These socks are for someone else who wears a shoe size about one bigger than my foot. So using size 1 needles, I cast on 68 stitches. Did a 2x2 cuff, which is pretty typical for me. But then I decided to add just this little bit of color work. So I have these staggered vertical lines at the very top of the cuff before moving into the second color. And then continuing with stockinette stitch and eye of partridge heel with a little bit of a garter ridge. This is how I do most of my heels. But I mirrored that color work here right before starting the toe decreases. So the cuff and the toe and the color work is in this white color. I am on my way with the second sock. I have just finished that heel turn, heel cup, I forget what you call that, and I need to pick up stitches for the gusset next. So this is at the point I'm at. I was watching a webinar recording earlier, so I got some work done on this already today. And something looks weird with that stitch. Yeah, so I am approximately halfway through the second sock. And these are meant as a gift, so I need to get them done so I can send them off. So, sock number 1. My next work in progress is another pair of socks. I think I had started these my last episode. Pretty sure I had. I haven't made a ton of progress on these because I've been flitting from project to project, but I'll show you anyway. Oh, I forgot to show you the yarn for these. Told you I'm all over the place. Here it is all skeined up, and I even have a label, it looks like. Sun Valley Fibers. It's tweedy fingering. It's, I think, 80% or 85%. Yeah, 85% merino, 15% Donegal. Here you can see the label. That Kindred Spirits color is the teal blue. So, there you go. That's the information, the critical information for that pair of socks. For this second one, I'm still on the first sock here. Also a gift. Also for someone whose feet are bigger than mine. So I cast on 70 stitches for these, but I'm using size 1 needles also. For this, I'm doing a 1x1 garter rib because I like how that hugs the leg a little more snugly than just stockinette. And it's a nice way of incorporating a stitch pattern without worrying about it competing with variegations in color. So this yarn, I don't think I have the label for it handy, but this yarn is Huntington Splash, which is a house sock yarn from Webs. I got this before they sold out to corporate overlords. I don't think I'll be shopping there anymore, but your opinion may vary. So yeah, this is like this nice kind of medium moody gray with splashes of different shades of blue and teal throughout. And I really like how it's coming out. So this is another one I would like to have done in the next like 2-3 weeks. So I need to get working on those, but between all the work meetings and, you know, webinars, and I don't really have conferences this month. I've got another one next month, but there should be plenty of opportunity to work on these, like, as I am sitting through other stuff. So those are my first 2 works in progress. You know, very understated, very normal, good kind of busy work for me. Now, I have started 3 sweater projects since I saw you last. Well, 2 sweaters and a vest. And that is unusual for me to have that many going at one time, especially when they're all meant for me. I'm used to having more going as gifts for other people. The sock projects are gifts. I'm used to making more things as gifts, and I'm just not in that place at the moment. There's reasons for it, I guess. Like, my daughter hasn't asked for anything recently. My son, I made him a bunch of stuff before we sent him off to college, so he's all set for the moment. Normally I'm knitting things for my nieces in preparation for the holidays, but I haven't kind of landed on what would be the best project for them. They are now ages 6 and 8, so they're in 1st and 3rd grades. Very opinionated kids, as 6 and 8-year-olds tend to be. And I just, you know, the older they get, the more I need to think about what I'm going to make for them that they will actually want. So I haven't like landed on a sweater pattern that just seems right, and I think it would be fun to make them some toys perhaps, or, you know, even like Christmas garlands or decorations or something fun like that, but I just haven't quite settled on anything. So for now, I've just started a bunch of other projects for myself, which feels a little bit selfish, but also just sort of indicative of the era I'm in, right? Just the time I'm in, right? The stage, life stage, whatever you want to call it. So, okay, let me tell you about my sweater fail, which is one of the reasons I don't have another finished one. So I had started, and I haven't even finished pulling it out yet, because the thing I started over, I just used a fresh skein. This is the beginning of a sweater by Sari Nordlund called Cocoa, the Cocoa Tee. And I thought it was going just swimmingly. This was my second attempt with Juniper Maroon Farm Zooey. It's a cotton linen blend. I forget the fiber breakdown, but it's approximately half and half. The yarn is a little bit thick and thin. I don't know how it's classified, like fingering or sport weight or whatever. I am getting, no matter what needle size I use, I'm getting 6 stitches to an inch. That's true with size 3. It's been true with size 5. So that's interesting. Anyway, so the Cocoa Tee, this is after my Neela sweater failed. The Neela is this gorgeous pattern by Natasha Hornby. It's got a texture on the front, a different texture on the back. I want to make it someday, just not with this yarn. The problem was I had a huge discrepancy in row gauge between the front and the back, and it just was not going to work. I even tried blocking it, like thorough soaking and blocking. Not a thing changed when I did that. So I knew that wasn't going to work. So I pulled that out and decided to make a Cocoa Tee instead, thinking This is a very basic pattern. It's almost all stockinette stitch, except for ribbing at the, neck and arm and bottom edges. So I won't have that same row gauge issue. The instructions are good, very clear. And clearly I got pretty far on it before I realized it wasn't gonna work. The issue is this neck. When I just hold it up, it's fine, okay? It looks like there's no problem. When I tried it on, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit, I was a good ways past the join under the arm, because it's knit top down, before I realized there was gonna be a problem. I had slipped this on over my head, but I had not noticed this issue until I had more of the fabric done. This back neck sits way too high. Like, it kind of bubbles up and bunches up, and there's just way too much height in the fabric here. It just was not gonna work. And I have already once tried starting a sweater, thoroughly blocking it, seeing that nothing has changed. And I knew that was, I don't know how blocking would possibly make a difference here. Like, I just don't know. So I have concluded that the problem must again be the yarn somehow. I did look, there are a few pages of other projects of the same pattern on Ravelry, and the ones at least where people are wearing them in the photos, the neckline looks great. So I'm not sure what went wrong. I mean, the fit is fine, like the opening for the neck hole and the width of the shoulders and everything seemed to be okay. But I think perhaps the issue is, again, the fiber content of this yarn is cotton and linen. It is completely inelastic, so it just does not relax. And when you do the top of this sweater, once you get past the ribbing for the neckline or for the collar, you are at the same time doing several sets of short rows to lower the front and some really aggressive increases along this shoulder line, which makes for a nice slope on the shoulder and a nice fit. But it just, because the yarn is not elastic at all, like wool would be, wool has some give, I think it's just too, it just can't relax somehow, even though I'm using a size 5 needle, okay? I don't know, which is bigger than the last one I was using. So, and when I give a gentle tug on this shoulder seam, I can just tell how tense and tight it is. So I just made the executive decision that, once again, this yarn is not going to work with this pattern. And I went to look for something else that was also plain, that could be top down so I could try it on as I go, that did not have short rows or any kind of extensive stitch manipulation at the top, because I think the yarn just doesn't have enough give for it to work. So that was disappointing. I did get suggestions from people when I posted about this online that I should block it, and I'm telling you, I've done that before and seen no change in the fabric, so not gonna do that. Well, I wanted something plain enough that I thought surely I have a pattern already. And sure enough, I do. All you can see here is a bunch of bunched up stitches on the needle, because I got a good start on this and then got distracted with other projects, so I haven't made a lot of progress recently. But it's a top-down V-neck tee, raglan increases down the V-neck until eventually you'll join it. Keep going a little bit further before you separate for the sleeves. Very straightforward pattern. The advantage of this is that I had like the biggest gauge swatch ever, so my gauge should be fine. You never know, but hopefully the gauge will be fine. So this is a third strike and you're out situation. If this doesn't work, because this is my third attempt with the yarn, then the yarn is going to be out of my life. Somebody else can knit with it. I like it. I like how it feels. I even like knitting with it, but if it's not gonna work for the third time, that's just it. So the pattern I'm using is called East End. It's by Alicia Plummer. It's an older pattern of hers. I think this was released in maybe 2013. Yeah, this says 2013. Well, it refers to something from 2013. I don't know if that's when this was released. Anyway, it's an old pattern, and I'm not going to say that I recommend it necessarily because the largest size it goes up to is 48 inches bust, which is not size inclusive. Now, Alicia Plummer is very conscientious now of creating patterns that are size inclusive. Most of her, I think all of her sweaters now go up to like a 68 inch or 70 inch bust, whatever that is in centimeters, I'm not sure. But this one does not. I think it's probably because this is an older pattern. That doesn't make it okay, but back in the day, people were not making things as size inclusive as before. This also might have been a pattern for like a yarn company where they didn't ask for bigger sizes. So I'm sure there are more updated size inclusive things out there, but I had already bought this years ago and decided to just go ahead and use it. And you know, so far I haven't found mistakes or any problems. So there you go. Yeah. But this should work out, you know, a nice plain V-neck. I am making it 34 inches around, which will give me between 2 and 3 inches of ease. I didn't want anything real tight. So that is the second size. And yeah, this is what it looks like along that increase line. So I won't finish it in time to wear it for like warm weather season, which is what I was hoping for, but I did want to get something else started with that yarn before I just gave up on it completely. The next thing I started was, so remember how we went to New Zealand this spring? It was, gosh, that was like 6 months ago. And it was such an amazing trip. I mean, there were a couple of bumps in the road with, like, you know, there always is on a vacation, but we had a fantastic time. It was our last major trip with the whole family before our oldest went off, you know, graduated from high school and off to college. And while we were there, I did buy some yarn, which I know I shared about in an episode at some point back then. But one of the yarns that I bought were several skeins of this stuff, which is called Big Natural, Naturally Big Natural. Clearly, they don't spend their budget on their marketing team because it's a little bit, I mean, it looks like this label has probably not changed since the 1990s, if they were existent back then. I don't even know. But it's New Zealand yarn. I think it is both grown and made. Well, it says it's made in New Zealand. I would hope it's New Zealand wool, but it's natural color, and it's an honest to God, like charcoal gray, which is hard to find. When you are looking for like natural colored wool, you get a lot of browns and beiges and creams, but it is hard to find a good natural gray. So I was charmed and I got some. This is a DK weight. And once again, you're gonna see, you know, a top-down sweater with a bunch of stitches bunched up on the needle, so it doesn't look like much, but I'm excited to have cast on. I love how this feels. I love the fabric. I think it's gonna be a perfect cardigan, cozy thing. And again, I'm using a pattern I bought a long time ago. Like, I have all these patterns, I should make them and not always just spend money on new ones. But it's from this book called Knit and Sew Uniform. There's a child's version as well, and I have both. Y'all, this is like, it's by, the cardigan is by Matter, who is Carrie Bostick Hoge. She's also a photographer. Green Line Studio did there's a sewing pattern for a tunic. The cool thing about these patterns is that it's like two basic things with lots and lots of variations. So the sweater, you can do either like lightweight or more of a DK weight. Here is one version. You can do different lengths of sleeves. They've got different collar options. This was published in the time where it was really popular to have the high-low hem. So short rows to make the back dip a lot. Here it is pretty pronounced. I think that's less trendy now. I don't know that I would do it. Here's like a real simple version of that cardigan. They show you how you can, they have instructions for pockets. And then this sewed tunic pattern, let me see if I can find, do they have pictures of just the tunic? I mean, there's so many variations of the sweater. Yeah, so the tunic has sleeves or not sleeves. You can tell they use linen to make this. I mean, I have to tell you, when I got this, I totally fell for like the lifestyle and aesthetic they were selling. Everything is sort of minimal and lots of soft colors and neutrals. It's not really me, but it's kind of what I want to be, you know? I want to be just uncomplicated. That is not going to happen. Someday maybe I will sew that top because it does look very comfortable. And could be nice to wear. But anyway, I am getting 19 stitches over 4 inches, which is what the worsted weight version calls for. I'm using a size 7 needle. Gosh, I can't even remember what size I'm making exactly. I did copy the pattern page so that I could mark off hash marks to keep track of my increases, because there's a different rate of increases for the front, which is sort of a very gentle V-neck, compared to the raglan. And with the raglan, you start off increasing every other row and then it's every 4th. So there's just like a lot of different things to keep track of. So maybe not entirely beginner friendly when you consider all of that, but I don't think it's too overwhelming. I just have to make sure I have that pattern with me so I can mark on it and make sure I know where I am. But anyway, I've been wanting more cardigans in my life, and I really did not want to sit on this yarn that I got on that trip, which was so special. So I am working on that as well. Now, those are both like, between those 2 sweaters and the socks I'm working on, it's like fast train to Snoozeville if you're not careful, because it's stockinette around and around, or stockinette back and forth. So what I'm really jonesing for is something with cables, but I haven't totally settled on what that's going to be. In the meantime, I really wanted to make a vest for myself using the Lighthearted Slipover pattern by Clara Eggers. I made the child's version for my little niece for her birthday. I don't know if she's ever worn it, but it was adorable. I'm trying to find a picture. I might have to slurp one off the internet and put it up here for you to see. But it's just a real simple vest with some color work on the bottom, so you don't have to deal with it at the top when you've got the openings for your neck and arms. And there are 2 charts that you can choose from. You can either do the heart pattern, which is what I did for my niece, or you can swap out, she calls it Trick or Treat. And it's October, and everything's falling apart with the climate, and everyone is just wrapped in anxiety with the election. And so I'm like, I'm gonna do something seasonal that it will be fun, it will bring me joy, and it will just kind of help keep me from totally spiraling out, right? So I am making the Trick or Treat version of the vest, and here's what I got so far. I think you can see the skulls. Down here are ghosts, which are perhaps a slightly more subtle. And then this is a heart kind of broken up in vertical stripes. And it's really fun. I've got, it's a little confusing. She gives you these charts and you can kind of choose which one you knit depending on how much length you want. And it's a little confusing what you should do where. I want long, I don't want super cropped. That's just not my style. So I'm just kind of making it work as I go. The cool thing about this is that it sort of shifts from one color being the background and kind of there's the most of it, to flipping. So at one point you flip your dominant colors, A and B, to B and A. I don't have quite enough of the dark color for the entire vest, so I am mixing in a couple of different grays, and you can see that when you look at this. There's one gray here, and then this darker, almost black charcoal gray here, along with the cream. I am using stash yarn. As tempting as it is to go buy something new, I am trying not to do that so much. Not always succeeding, but there you go. So what I'm using for yarn is a mix of, I think this is probably Cascade, in cream, essentially undyed, but cream color. And I have another skein of it in case I run out, but I probably won't. What I wanted to use for the rest of it, which will be the solid part at the top too, is this dark charcoal heather. This is Valley Yarns, Northampton, worsted. I used this in a sweater that I made for my brother 2 or 3 years ago. It's really fun. I will put, the designer is kind of a shitbag, so I won't list their name, but I will put a picture of the sweater here because it was just really fun. But I actually had like a skein and a half of this left over, so it's probably not quite enough for the full length vest and everything. So I am mixing in some Knitpicks Wool of the Andes worsted. This is cobblestone heather, I think. Yes. Mixing that in some of the bottom just to help stretch that out a little bit so that I have enough, because I have a whole other skein of this. Anyway, it's going to be fun. I hope to have it done so I can wear it around Halloween. I mean, I'll wear it whenever I want, but it seems to make sense for Halloween. So, you know, it's a little cheesy, but sometimes you just need to be a little cheesy, you know, to just kind of get through things. So, all right, those are all of my works in progress, and that's all the knitting I have to show you. I think I'll take just a few minutes to share a couple of things that I've been reading, just because when you read something really good and it just sticks in your mind, I think that's a sign that it's a good book. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. So, 2 library books here. These aren't the only things I've been reading, but these are the ones that are worth mentioning. This first one I just finished. It's called Holding It Together: How Women Became America's Safety Net. It's by Jessica Calarco. She is here, I guess. I heard her on a podcast interview, and at the end, when I heard that she is a professor at UW-Madison, I was like, ooh, I really need to read this book. So she's a sociologist. This is about basically how women's labor is exploited in our country, unsurprisingly. So here's just from the jacket. American society is being held together by women. Unpaid or underpaid women bear the brunt of critical tasks, including caring for children, the elderly, and the vulnerable, and keeping institutions like schools, community groups, and religious organizations afloat. And she goes on to just say like what the emotional and financial and societal consequences are of that, and how we just can't win, basically. But it's really good. She did a study of a couple of thousand people, starting with a couple of thousand people in Indiana, starting about 6 years ago. And she was able to follow a whole lot of families, even through the pandemic, and sort of track the the impact of those shutdowns during COVID in 2020 and even beyond. Like at the very end, she talks about like what happened when CARES funding ran out, when some of that critical emergency funding ran out that really kept people afloat. But it's really good. She addresses all kinds of ways that like poverty and social class and different like family situations, like married versus unmarried, different incomes, whether you have 2 working parents or just one. There's a lot in here about decisions around like once you have a kid or once you have a second kid, often that's when women either drop out of the workforce or work less or are passed up or decide to pass up like promotion opportunities because there's just too much responsibility at home. Basically, it's about how women shoulder all this responsibility and not enough is being taken care of by what should be social safety nets, which are completely inadequate. You know, things like food assistance and rent assistance and what we used to call welfare, and how men could be doing a whole lot more to support the kind of changes we need. So I actually had to kind of read this in small pieces at a time because I found myself so enraged by it. Because despite being mostly on the other side of this, like my children are old enough, independent enough, like I am not in the thick of the childcare crisis, like they're older than that. But I could not enter the workforce because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to work and pay for childcare. We would have lost money, and we were not in a position to do that when my kids were born and when they were really little. So I still think about that a lot. I'm in a good place in my life right now, but that had a huge, huge impact on me. So yeah, so I read stuff like this and I think about it a lot, especially when I am making decisions about who to vote for or where to donate my money to various organizations or, what I say online, because those are things that are very important to me. So I recommend this, but save yourself a little space for feminist rants every once in a while if you're going to read it, okay? Because I've certainly subjected my family to those, and they're thankfully very open and willing to listen. The other book I'm reading, I'd never heard of this author. It's called Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. The reason I am reading it is that I follow Barbara Kingsolver, who is one of my favorite writers ever. She's a novelist. She wrote Demon Copperhead, which won the Pulitzer. So you should all know who she is because she's fantastic. But she recommended this. She said she was reading it and said it was really good. I saw on her Instagram account. So I was like, okay, Barbara Kingsolver's reading it. That's good enough for me. And I am quite enjoying it. It's kind of hard to explain what it's about. I mean, it's just like this woman who's turning 40 and she's, it's just like about her family, like her parents and her sister, and she doesn't really like her husband, and you find out through her story and through the course of the book that she has some serious mental illness that doesn't get diagnosed until pretty late, and that has like shaped everything for her. And there's just something about the writing that is so good. Like the way she describes things, it can be very, very funny, even in the midst of a very serious situation, or when she's in a place where she's very unhappy. It can be just so funny and incisive the way she describes things. So I recommend this. It's really quite good. I find myself somewhat frustrated with the protagonist, even though I know she can't help how she behaves. Sometimes I feel frustrated with her, but I guess that's a sign of good character writing, because people are complex and we're not always good and at our best and not always very sympathetic. So she is very sympathetic through most of it. Just sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, why are you so mean? We know why she's mean. Anyway, now I'm rambling, but I do recommend this book. That's all I've got for today. I will see you sometime in the next few weeks. So until then, take care.